We complain about the worst year ever when a movie disappoints or plans fall apart, but historians know a year that truly deserved the title. In 536 CE, the world dimmed, the air chilled, and ancient writers said the sun looked sick. Modern scientists now call it the start of the most catastrophic period in recorded history, a time of darkness, famine, plague, and collapse. This is the story of the year that nearly broke humanity. A sun that forgot how to shine. The opening act of this nightmare year began in the Mediterranean. While accompanying General Belisarius during a military campaign, the Byzantine historian Procopius noticed something deeply unsettling. The sun rose each morning, but its light was dim and pale, as though daylight had been replaced with a weak imitation. Procopius wrote that the sun looked like the moon at midday, a dull orb that refused to shine with its usual brilliance. This dim light persisted for months and eventually for more than a year. Far to the east, chroniclers in Syria described the same uncanny darkness. Michael the Syrian later wrote that the sun lost its brightness for 18 long months, and even when it appeared to shine, it offered only the faintest glow as though it were covered by a veil. People genuinely feared the sun was dying. Imagine living in a time with no scientific explanation, watching day after day pass under a gray, ash-colored sky, believing the end of the world had begun. The sky itself seemed broken. For centuries, the cause remained a mystery, but modern scientists have since confirmed that a colossal volcanic eruption, somewhere yet unidentified, ejected immense amounts of ash into the upper atmosphere. The result was a globe wrapped in a thin curtain of volcanic dust that dimmed the sun across continents. The world was plunged into a cold, colorless twilight that refused to lift, when darkness devoured the crops. Sunlight is the heartbeat of every plant, every harvest, every living ecosystem on Earth. Without strong light, crops fail. Without crops, people starve. And in 536, starvation took hold of the world like a tightening fist. With the sun blocked and temperatures dropping between 1 and 3 degrees Celsius, harvests failed across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Fields that had been fertile for generations suddenly produced nothing. Seeds rotted in the ground. Grains never ripened. Fruit trees stood barren. Ireland recorded a disaster so severe that historians simply call it the bread failure, a term that barely captures the desperation of a population watching their food supplies vanish. In China, the situation was even more terrifying. Snow fell in summer. Frost appeared in August. Crops died before farmers could even harvest them. Famine spread like wildfire. Cities starved, villages emptied. Entire regions lost enormous portions of their population within a short span of time. People everywhere began rationing whatever little food they had left, but nature had turned hostile. The world had become colder, darker, and hungrier, and no one had an explanation for why. A plague arrives at the worst possible time. As if endless twilight and worldwide famine weren't enough, the next disaster arrived quietly, riding on rats, fleas, and the weakened bodies of malnourished humans. It was a plague, violent, aggressive, and merciless. What began as a sore on the palm of the hand quickly swelled into painful lumps, fever, delirium, and finally death. Buboes swelled in the groin and under the arms until they burst, releasing infection into the bloodstream. The disease tore through Constantinople like a storm of death, overwhelming every district of the city. Bodies filled the streets faster than they could be buried. With no capacity to handle mass death, people threw corpses into the sea, but the waves simply washed them back onto the shore. The stench swallowed the city. Emperor Justinian himself fell ill but survived, though millions of his subjects weren't so fortunate. Historians estimate that as many as 50 million people died across the plague's various waves, a staggering number considering the population of the world at that time. This plague, later known as the Justinian Plague, hit at the exact moment when societies were already weakened by famine. Never has the phrase, "when it rains, it pours," felt so crushingly literal. China's sky turns to ash and snow. While Europe and the Mediterranean were suffering through darkness and disease, China faced a hauntingly surreal climate collapse. Ancient Chinese records describe clouds raining yellow dust, thick enough to collect in handfuls, as though the sky itself were disintegrating. Chroniclers wrote of snow falling during the hottest months, frost creeping across summer fields, and crops dying en masse. This climatic chaos triggered a famine of horrifying proportions. In some regions, nearly 80% of the population perished. Entire cities were reduced to ghost settlements. The people who survived did so through desperation, endurance, or sheer luck. The land was cold, barren, and unpredictable, and every year seemed to bring more misery. Volcanoes, the hidden villains behind it all. For centuries, the events of 536 remained a puzzle. How could the entire world grow dark at once? Why did temperatures plummet globally? What force could disrupt weather across continents? The answers finally began emerging from the ice. Scientists studying ice cores in Greenland and Iceland discovered layers of volcanic glass particles dating to precisely 536 CE. These particles were unmistakable. They were the fingerprints of a massive volcanic eruption. More surprises followed. Additional layers appeared in ice cores from the years 540 and 547, revealing that Earth didn't just suffer one eruption, it endured a series. These back-to-back volcanic events launched ash into the stratosphere again and again, preventing the atmosphere from recovering. The planet was trapped in a prolonged cooling period now known as the Late Antique Little Ice Age. For the volcanoes, these were years of spectacular, world-altering fireworks. For humanity, it was a slow suffocation of warmth, food, and stability. Rome's final chance at glory slips away. In the 6th century, the Roman Empire existed in a slimmer, easterly form known as the Byzantine Empire. Emperor Justinian dreamed of restoring Rome to its former glory. His brilliant generals were winning battle after battle, reclaiming territory in Italy, North Africa, and Spain. For a moment, it seemed possible that Rome might rise again. Then the darkness fell, then the famine arrived, then the plague followed. Within a few years, the empire lost between 35 and 55% of its population. Farms emptied, armies thinned, tax revenue vanished, local revolts erupted. Justinian's grand dream collapsed not because of political failure, but because the world itself was coming undone. It is entirely possible that, had 536 never happened, history might have told a different story of Rome. But fate had other plans. Civilizations across the ocean collapsed too. On the other side of the world, the Moche civilization in Peru was dealing with its own catastrophe. Their sophisticated irrigation systems and fishing economy unraveled as extreme floods, triggered by an unusually powerful El Niño event, destroyed farmland and drove fish away from their coasts. Their economy crashed. Starvation spread. Like so many others, the Moche were overwhelmed by a climate they could not predict or control. The tragedy of 536 was not localized, it was global. Science confirms the nightmare. For centuries, scholars pieced together fragments of ancient texts, tree rings, ice cores, and historical records. Eventually, a group of researchers led by Harvard historian Michael McCormick confirmed what earlier historians had long suspected. 536 was not just a difficult year. It was the turning point that plunged the world into decades of climate instability, disease, societal upheaval, and economic collapse. Tree rings showed severely stunted growth beginning in that year. Ice cores revealed volcanic ash from eruptions powerful enough to dim the sun. Historical accounts aligned perfectly with scientific data. The Earth itself preserved the evidence of its suffering. The slow return of light. Despite the misery that 536 unleashed, humanity endured. As decades passed, sunlight returned. Crops slowly revived. Economies rebuilt themselves. Ice cores began showing traces of lead again, meaning civilizations had resumed mining silver for coins. Trade routes recovered. Cities repopulated. After one of the darkest chapters in human history, the world found a way forward. The story of 536 is not only a warning about nature's power, it is proof of human resilience. Civilizations cracked but did not collapse entirely. Empires weakened but adapted. Communities suffered but survived. The Earth changed, but humanity changed with it. And that, my friends, is the haunting legacy of the year 536. If you enjoyed this journey into the past and want more stories that peel back the layers of our world's strangest moments, make sure to hit that like and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.